Hello, everyone out there. Let me just get my my camera ready here. Okay. All right, I think we're good. So this is the last in a series of three. Thank Or Sameach and the other sponsors, Chazak, Emet, Torah Anytime. Appreciate it. And for this one, this is far and away my favorite topic. I don't know if it's ever been recorded because usually I do it over the course of Shabbos. So I will be on my best behavior while the record button is on. Now, we talked about this earlier, that if there's a story in the Torah, there has to be a reason for it. And if there's ever one story where we may miss that point, it's the story of Yosef, the story of Joseph. And the reason is that it has, I think, the most significant narrative pull or magnetism. The story is, it's unbelievable. And it has everything you could possibly want in a story. It's got drama, it's got intrigue, thrills, chills, it's got father-son relationship, and that between Yosef and his father, Jacob, Yaakov. It's got sibling rivalry. We touched on that last week, although we pointed out that this sibling rivalry is very different than other ones that we've seen earlier. It's got the dreams, which are always interesting. It's got the sail by the brothers of Yosef to Egypt after he narrowly misses getting killed by them. It's got his rise to prominence. It's got them coming down later. It's got them not knowing who he is because he's masquerading. He is actually the leader in Egypt, but they don't know who he is. And then it's got the revelation. It's got the reunion with his father. Amazing story. It would make a great Broadway show. In fact, it did make a great Broadway show. But the story is so powerful that it's easy to miss the lessons that are in it. The lessons are endless. I have spent, without exaggeration, years working through the story. And I want to pull out one aspect of the story and then try to draw some lessons from it. So what I want to talk about are the different dream sequences that we see in the story. And in order to do that, I want to first go through the story of the dreams, some of it inside, like by reading the actual passages, and some I'll paraphrase because it'll take too long if I go through all of the passages. And so we're familiar with them, but I think it's worthwhile to go through them because after we go through them, I can freeze the frame and go back and ask some questions that maybe we should be asking when we analyze the story. So it starts off, as we know, Jacob, Yaakov, has got 12 sons, and he makes a long, colorful cloak for one of them, the Technicolor dream coat, as Andrew Lloyd Webber and company called it on the Broadway show. And his brothers see that their father loved him more than the other brothers, and they don't like him. They can't speak to him in shalom. They just can't be peaceful. And then to add fuel to the fire, he has a dream, and he tells it to his brothers, and they hate him even more. He tells them in his dream that, he says, listen to this dream that I had. We were binding sheaves in the field, and my sheaf rose up and stood up straight, and then your sheaves surrounded it, and they bowed down to mine. Oh, this is going to go over really well. So his brothers said to him, you're going to be a king over us? You're going to rule over us? And remember, they've already elected Yehuda as their leader. So they see this as an insurrection, like we talked about last week. Like, here we go again. It's Esau all over again, trying to trick his father. This time he's trying to trick our father, take over the leadership. They're upset about this. Then and so it says that they hated him even more because of his dreams and his words. Then he has another dream. He relates it to them. This time it's the sun and the moon and the 11 stars, and they're bowing down to him. And he tells it to his father and his brothers. His father rebuked him, said to them, what's this dream you've dreamed? Are your mother and your brothers going to come and bow down on the ground to you? Pointing out to him that it's not even possible because you don't have your mother anymore, because your mother, Mama Rachel, she's already died. So we fast forward a little bit, and Yaakov tells the other brothers, tells Yosef to go check on the other brothers. And so he goes checking on them, not realizing that he is walking into one of history's greatest traps. So when he arrives on the scene, they say, here comes the dreamer. Now let us kill him, throw him into one of the pits, and then we'll say that a wild beast has devoured him, and then we'll see what will become of his dreams. In other words, if you're dead at the bottom of a pit, you're not ruling over anybody, let alone ruling over us, because this is going to be it. Now, of course, his younger brother, Binyamin, the one brother that he has, it's a full brother from the same mother, is not part of this, but the others are very much a part of it. His brother Ruvain intercedes with a plan to save him. convinces them with the approval of Judah, of Yehuda, not to kill him, and they commute the sentence while Reuven steps away. He doesn't realize what's going on, but the rest of the brothers sell him as a slave into Egypt. Reuven's distraught when he gets back, and now he ends up in Egypt, and he's 17 years old, nice Jewish boy, devastatingly handsome, like all Jewish men, of course, and he's working for Potiphar, the chief executioner in Egypt. So in effect, he's working for, you pick whoever it is. He's working for the Godfather. He's working for Vito Corleone or Tony Soprano, the chief executioner in Egypt. And who is going to notice him? His master's wife. And so she starts up with him in an extremely provocative, suggestive manner, day after day, trying to persuade him to engage in an affair with her. And finally, in a dramatic moment, when according to some commentators, he's waffling and his restraint is loosening, he runs out, leaving behind his outer garment in her hands. And she frames him. She says that he has tried to assault her, and he is thrown in the dungeon, where he remains for quite some time. Meantime, back home, what has gone on is that his brothers, after selling him, have committed further an act of duplicity, in that they have dipped his coat into blood, and they've told his father that suggested to his father that he was eaten by a wild animal. So his father is bereft of him for many, many years until their reunion. Now he's in the dungeon, and one day, two of his fellow prisoners, the wine minister and the baker, Pharaoh's wine minister and baker, each of whom had committed an infraction and been thrown in the dungeon, they're there with him, and they have long faces. And he says to them, what's the problem? What's bothering you? And they say to him, we had these dreams, and these dreams are bothering us. So he says, why don't you tell me the dreams? And so what do they have to lose? So the wine minister tells him the dream that he had, and Yosef says to him, this is its interpretation. These 3 branches that you dreamed about are 3 days. In 3 days, Paro is going to lift you up, Paro, and put you back in your position. And you're going to put Paro's cup in his hand, just was your previous practice when you were his butler, his wine minister. But remember me when things go well with you. Mention me to Pharaoh and take me out of this dungeon. And because he explains, I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews. I've done nothing wrong. So then the chief baker sees, hey, that went pretty well. Why don't I also ask him to interpret my dream? So the chief baker shares with Yosef the details of his dream. And this time it does not end real well. Yosef says to him that in another 3 days, what your dream means is that Paro is going to lift your head from off of you. He's going to hang you on a tree, and birds are going to eat the flesh from off of you. And sure enough, 3 days later, exactly as predicted, it's Paro's birthday. Paro makes a feast for all his servants, and he brings up the wine minister and the baker. He puts the wine minister back in his position, and he places the cup on Paro's hand, just as a parenthetical. Some say that this is where we have the custom, many of us on Shabbat, on Shabbos, when we make Kiddush, we hold the cup on our palm, because we see from here, this is how you present a cup to a king. We're making Kiddush in front of the King of Kings. That's how we hold it. Interesting that that's where we learn it from. And the chief baker gets hanged, just as Yosef had interpreted to him. However, the chief butler, the wine minister, does not remember Yosef. Instead, he forgets him. Some of the commentators say that Yosef had actually gotten punished for asking the wine minister to remember him, which is very weird. What did he do wrong? He interpreted the dream. He said, in 3 years, you're going back up to Pharaoh. He knows he was unjustly imprisoned. He says, by the way, do me a solid. Maybe mention me to Pharaoh. Maybe I can get some clemency. Maybe I can, help out around the palace. I'm the overseer in the dungeon. I used to be a faithful servant to Potiphar. So some commentators say the reason he got punished, even though normally you put in your hishtadlus, you put in your effort, he's clearly putting an effort here, is that at his level and at his ability to realize what makes people tick. He had spent enough time with the wine minister and the baker. He should have realized that the wine minister is the ultimate opportunist, as follows. If the wine minister is going to benefit from mentioning him, he's going to mention him to Pharaoh. And if he's not going to benefit from mentioning him, he's not going to mention him to Pharaoh, which means there's no reason to ask him. Whether or not you ask him, he's only going to mention you if he benefits from it. So by asking him, it showed at Yosef's sublime level of belief in God, a little bit, a tiny bit, maybe, of desperation. And that's why he's punished. So sure enough, 2 years go by, and now the opportunist, the wine minister, gets his big chance. Why? Because here's our third set of dreams. The big man himself, El Jefe, the grand poobah, ruler of the free world, or not so free world at the time, Pharaoh, has dreams. And they are driving him crazy. And so what he does is, we're told that this is after these 2 years, 2 more years in the dungeon, that he's very agitated. So he summons all the wizards of Egypt and all of its wise men. And Paro related his dream to them, but no one could interpret them for Paro. So he's very upset, obviously upset. And the wine minister now realizes, what an incredible opportunity. Not only am I back in my position, but now I can further ingratiate myself to his excellency. So he approaches the king, Paro, and he says, I recall my sins today. I had done something wrong and you were upset. You put me under guard in the dungeon, me and the chief baker. And we each had a dream. And with us, there was this kid, this youth, a Jew, a slave of the chief executioner. And we told him our dreams, and he interpreted our dreams for us. And it came to pass exactly as he interpreted. That's what happened. He restored me to my position, and him, the baker, he hanged. In Hebrew, Osi Heshiv al Kani, me, he restored to my position. For Oso, him, Tola, he hanged. And so Paro says, okay, let me try this guy. I'm very upset. Nobody else has been able to help me out. Call him up. So they go down to the dungeon, and they bring Yosef up, and they spiff him up, and he comes up to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, okay, I've heard you can interpret dreams. Yosef, being Yosef, contradicts him. He says, not me. God will respond to the peace of Pharaoh. Okay? Paro, he's obviously desperate enough. He runs through that stop sign, even though he's been contradicted. And so he shares the content of his dreams with Pharaoh. We know what those dreams were. The first dream was 7 fat cows had been eaten by 7 skinny cows. The second dream was 7 nice-looking, plump ears of corn or stalks of grain, wherever you translate it, were eaten by thin, an equal number of parched ones. And so Yosef, and if you notice, if you compare the two renditions of Pharaoh's dreams, you'll see that in the first rendition, where the Torah tells us the details, and then you compare them to when Paro tells them over to Yosef, he makes some subtle changes. I don't have time to go through them, but there are several. If you go through passage by passage, back to back, you'll see there are some subtle changes when he's telling them over, which is a little weird. And here we go. Yosef starts interpreting the dreams. So Yosef tells Pharaoh, behold, 7 years are coming, during which there will be great abundance in the entire land of Egypt. 7 years of famine will rise after them, and all the abundance will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will devastate the land, and nor will be known the former abundance of the land, because that famine that will follow it will be very severe, very severe. As for the dream being repeated, because Paro had 2 dreams, twice to Paro, it is because the thing stands ready before God, and God is hurrying to do it. Now he continues. Remember, he's only been asked to interpret the dream, but he keeps going. Yosef is on a roll, and nobody's stopping him. He says, now, Paro should seek a man of understanding and wisdom and place him in charge of the land of Egypt. This is what Paro should do. He should appoint officials over the land, prepare the land during the years of abundance, let them gather in all the food during the good years that are coming, let them store up the grain under the jurisdiction of Paro, let the food be kept in the cities, let them safeguard it. The food will be held in safekeeping for the land, for the 7 years of famine, which will be coming to the land. Let the land not be cut off by the famine. And immediately we're told that this thing was good in the eyes of Paro and in the eyes of his servants. So Paro says to his servants, can anyone else like this guy, Yosef, be found? A man who has God's spirit in him? Interesting. Pagan Egypt. They worship the Nile. They worship the sun. They worship animals. All of a sudden, he's recognizing God's spirit in this young man. And so Paro says to Yosef, look, after God's informed you all this, there's no one so understanding as wise as you. You're the man. You shall be over my house. By your word, all my people will be fed. Only by virtue of the throne will I be greater than you. So Paro says, behold, I have placed you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Boy, oh boy, rags to riches, out of the dungeon. And now young Yosef is running the entire country. Fantastic. So now let's go back and try to tease out some questions that maybe we should be asking from this story that maybe we miss because it's just such a gripping story and it's so interesting and it's so entertaining that maybe we missed them. So number one, why were the brothers upset at Yosef's dreams and his words? Just say they're upset at the dreams. They're already upset about the coat, and they're upset about the back and forth between them. They're not getting along so well. And the dreams, like I said, fuel on the fire. What's the dreams and the words? The Torah does not add anything extra. So if it tells us dreams and words, something's going on there. Number two, why in heaven's name is Pharaoh, Paro, so desperate? He summoned all of the wizards, all of the dream interpreters back in ancient Egypt. He's got more magicians there than Harry Potter's got at Hogwarts. He's got necromancers and soothsayers and wizards and warlocks and neuromancers. Funny word, it's the technical term for somebody who interprets dreams. He's got them on staff. So this isn't a problem for which he hasn't prepared. This isn't like something happens like later is going to happen, the 10 plagues. Like, whoa, we've never seen anything like this before. He's got dreams. He's got wizards and dream interpreters, fortune tellers, anybody you could possibly need to interpret a dream. What's going on? Why is he so desperate that he has to rely on this Jew, this slave out of the dungeon? Very strange. Next question is, the wine minister says to Pharaoh. Now, you got to choose your words carefully when you're speaking to Pharaoh. You say the wrong thing, and your head can be rolling in the gutter before you even finish the last word of the sentence. He said to Pharaoh that this guy, this Jewish kid, servant in the dungeon, he put back in my position, and him, the baker, he hanged. If I'm Paro, I'm saying, whoa, 1 second. Who put you back in your position? Who hanged the baker? I'm pretty sure I did that. You're telling me that the kid in the dungeon did that? At best, he should have said, he interpreted, and just as he predicted, or just as he interpreted, you put me back in my position, and you hang the baker. Why is he saying he put me back in my position, and he hanged the baker? Let alone, you want to tell me, he's speaking to a friend, and he's so thankful to Yosef. He has such gratitude, such hakaras hatov, and he wants to give him all the credit, but he's speaking to Pharaoh. Why are you doing that? Very strange. Next, why did Paro, I mean, this one I already hinted at to you, why is he changing details in the dreams? If you're that agitated and nobody can interpret the dreams for you, wouldn't you so faithfully tell over every exact detail of the dream? Why would you be careless, if not reckless, in changing some of the details? Very strange. And it's not because Paro is not a smart guy. And the last one, and this one is this is off the charts. He brings this kid up out of the dungeon. He's the ruler of the world with an iron fist. And he says, do me a favor, interpret the dreams for me. Yosef has interpreted the dreams. That's it. You're done. Thanks, kid. And he just keeps going. Not only does he keep going, he's giving advice to Paro. But wait, he's not just giving advice to Paro. Let's distill his advice. Paro, I'm going to speak slowly. I don't know how smart you are, okay? Here we go. You ready? Maybe get a pen and paper because I don't want you to miss this. There's going to be tremendous bounty in the land. And then there's going to be a famine. 7 years of bounty, 7 years of famine. You still with me, Paro? Okay, good. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to store food. Are you kidding? Are you kidding me? This is his brilliant, genius advice that Paro never would have been able to figure out without him. Oh my, this is incredible. So some say, no, there was some chachma, there was some wisdom, because he said put one person in charge, centralize the storage. Come on. Paro couldn't have figured out that we need a department of food storage and then go through. He didn't need confirmation from the Senate. He's Paro. Take somebody who's good at organizing and put him in charge of storing food. And his reaction, not only does he not get upset that Yosef has run through the stop sign and given him advice when all he asked for was an interpretation, and given him advice that is so painfully obvious, it's almost a chutzpah. It's almost an insult to Paro. You're telling me, like, I wouldn't have figured that out? That we're gonna have bounty and then famine, I should store food? Instead, his reaction is, this is unbelievable. It's true what they say about those Jews. I mean, you're a genius. There's nobody like you. Nobody would have figured that out. You are in charge of the entire country. What is going on? It's bananas. What in the world is going on? So, I had the privilege, back when I was at Ursameach, this is circa 1988, so we're going back more than 30 years, Last week when I was there, I did this live in front of a group there, and I was in the room where I had the privilege of listening every day, except for the weekends, to my Rebbe, Rabbi Uziel Malevsky Zatzal, Zecher Tzadik Levrocha, and he would give a parsha shir, an hour a day throughout the week, and he asked some of these questions, and he answered them. So I want to share with you his answer, and then use it to answer the other questions. So the question that he asked, that he focused on, was why was it that Paro was so desperate, and why did the wine minister use such a weird language? And so in order to explain this, what he pointed out is the following. Rashi helps us because Rashi says, if you look, the Torah says that it doesn't say that no one was able to interpret the dreams. It says no one was able to interpret the dreams for Pharaoh. So Rashi says, you know what that means? No one could give him an interpretation that he liked, because they were all saying to him the following. He'd call on the first guy. Okay, let's go, Mr. Neuromancer number one, dream interpreter number one. I had these dreams. They're driving me crazy. What do they mean? And he said, Your Excellency, I'm not comfortable with that. Something along these lines. What do you mean? Let's go. It's bothering me. Tell me what they mean. Do I have to? Yes. And he told them, what the dreams mean is that you're going to have 7 daughters, and they're all going to die. You're going to bury them all. Kill him. Bring me the next. Let's go. Next interpreter. The next interpreter comes in. I get these dreams to drive me crazy. What do they mean? I just, I got a headache. I don't know. What do they mean? Do I have to say? Yes. You're going to have 7 daughters, and they're going to die. Okay? One after the other after the other. Every one of them is telling them what the dreams mean is that you're going to have 7 daughters, and they're all going to die. You think that would make somebody desperate? You think that would make somebody willing to even take you got to be kidding me. He's a slave in a dungeon, and he's a kid, and he's a Jew? What choice do I have? I got 7 daughters that are going to die. He's going out of his mind. Every single person. And these guys know what they're doing. They're all telling him. Not one. You can't wrap your mind around one. 7 daughters. They're all going to die. And so he's desperate. Okay, bring him up. Bring him up. So now, Malevsky turns to a Gemara. It's in Gemara Brachos. It tells us the story of Bereishit and Abaye and Rava. So Abaye and Rava, 2 of the great sages in Jewish history. They knew about this fellow Bereishit, who was an interpreter of dreams. I don't know if he had a shop that, 25 cents, interpret your dream, or whatever they would charge back in those days. And so it happened now that one day, the great Abaye and Rava had the same dream. What do you know? Just an interesting coincidence. They compare notes in the morning before studying together, I suppose. And they say, you know what? Let's go to Bereishit. Let's test it out. Now, it was kind of known that Bereishit was, he was malleable. He was persuadable. And what would typically happen was, if you gave him a little schmear before you told him your dream, you would tend to get a good interpretation. And if you didn't grease him, he'd still give you an interpretation, but it would not be a good one. So they would say to him, so each one went in and they told him the dreams. Now, the one who gave him one of them gave him whatever it was, a few dollars. That's Abaye. And he gives Abaye this incredible interpretation. All these wonderful, wonderful things are going to happen to you with respect to your study and your students and your children and your parnasa, your livelihood. Rava does not give him any money. Tells him the exact same dream, word for word. And the interpretation is, it's horrifying. It is beyond imagining every possible thing that you could imagine. Horrible, horrible things. Tells him these things are going to happen to you. And that's what happens. Exactly as he interpreted. These wonderful things happened to Abaye. These terrible things happened to Rava. Sometime later, Bereishit is traveling together with Rava in a boat, and a book falls out of his pocket, and Rava picks it up, and he sees that in the book it says that dreams go according to the mouth of the interpreter, meaning that the interpreter of dreams has the power to interpret them. Meaning he's not interpreting, he's not looking at the dream saying, oh, I have the power to figure out what that dream means. No, it's a much more significant power. It's I have the power to decide what those dreams mean through my interpretation. Meaning that whatever I say, whatever I interpret, I guess within some reason or has to be some connection to the dream, that's what's going to happen. So Rava is furious with him because he sees now writ large that it wasn't that he was interpreting the dreams, meaning, yeah, they may have sounded alike. It just so happens I I could so focus on the nuances and the subtleties of the dreams. So I was able to ferret out that really Abaya's meant something good and Rava's meant something bad. So Rava now sees, no, it had nothing to do with that. He took care of Abaya because he gave him a few shekel, and he wailed on Rava because he didn't grease him. So Rava's furious about this. Sharmalevsky turns and says, think about it. If Bar Hedja, whoever he is, had the power to interpret dreams, what do you think Yosef had? When the brothers say, here comes the dreamer, you know what phrase they use? They say, here comes the Baal HaChalomos, the master of dreams. And this is a guy that they really, really don't like. And yet, he's given that honorific. He is the master of dreams. So Sharmalevsky Zatzal says, posits, that if Bar Hedja, whoever he was, lost to history, had the power to interpret dreams, not interpret meaning I can figure out what the dreams mean, but to decide what they mean, and then that would happen, then of course, kal v'chomer, al achas kama v'kama, as we lawyers would say, a fortiori, Yosef definitely had that power. So now let's go back into our story. The wine minister shows up. He tells Yosef his dream, and Yosef immediately, who's smarter than the average bear, says, this is my ticket out of here. Okay? He doesn't just interpret the dream. He decides right then and there, I'm taking this guy and I'm putting him back in his position. And you, buddy, when you get there, remember me. Put in the good word to me, to Paro. Now, that's great. That explains what's going on. But now there's one tiny problem. If that's true, that means that Yosef killed the baker. He didn't just interpret his dream. He's not just a mere dream interpreter where he looked at the dream and he analyzed it, he figured out what it meant. He decided what it meant. When that baker gave him his dream, he said, you know what, buddy? Sayonara, au revoir, shalom, see ya, goodbye. So how could he kill the baker? Now, what are you going to say? It was target practice. He said, I'm not sure just how powerful I am. Let me try to kill somebody. Yeah, I don't need the baker. I'm already sending the wine minister back. Let me see. I don't know. I've never actually killed anyone before. This is going to be interesting. Let me see if it works. Yeah, it worked. How do you like that? I am pretty powerful. I can kill somebody through interpreting their dream. What's going on? So I'll never forget this. It's going back to 1988. Sharmalevsky says to somebody in the class, he says, do me a favor, can you just grab me a sitter from the shelf? And already I'm thinking, that's a little interesting. Like you figure if he's going to prove it from somewhere, maybe a folio of the Talmud, maybe the Medrash, like a garden variety sitter. And some guy goes and takes a sitter off the shelf, which is, something that we're all familiar with and we use all the time. And he flips through and he opens up to an unbelievably obscure prayer that we say once a year. We say it on a holiday called Asara B'Teves, the 10th day of Teves. It is not a very well-known holiday. It is one of the minor fasts. And on that fast day, like we do on all fast days, we say some extra prayers. They are called slichos, some extra prayers to God. And he starts reading, and he translates while he's reading. And so I will translate for you, and this is what he reads. And you can test this. You can pick up your handy art scroll sitter if you have one handy after the class, and you can look this up. It's the slichos for the 10th of Teves. And so here we are. This is our prayer. My adversaries opened their mouths and swallowed my heritage. They overpowered me mightily and drank and swallowed my blood. Strangers besieged me and treated my brethren wrongly. Those who said, destroy, destroy the offspring of Seir the Horite. It's Asaph. So we're talking about our bitterest enemies, people that want to absolutely obliterate us, destroy us, kill us. This they said, now we're quoting them, let us go and destroy them and obliterate their memory. So we're quoting the plans of our most bitter enemies. And now here comes the prayer. O jealous and avenging God, requite them. Let them bear their destruction, pay them according to their deeds, and let them be ashamed of their hope. Now we're about to mention one of our most bitter enemies, meaning God, I want you to take care of them like you did too. Now the only question is, who is going to be listed next? Unfortunately, because of the horrors of Jewish history, there are any number of people that can come in next. It could be Lavan. It could be Paro. It could be Nebuchadnezzar. It could be Titus. It could be somebody from the Inquisition, the Crusades, the pogroms, and nowadays terms it could be Hitler. We have a bigger rogues gallery than Batman has. We have enemy after enemy after enemy in every time period and every place. And so who do we list here in the prayer? We say, God, let pay them according to their deeds. Let them be ashamed of their hope, like the one who dreamt of 3 wicker baskets. Pharaoh's baker. What? This is the most unexpected, like ridiculous pull. That was an obscure prayer or an obscure day, but you can't get more obscure than this. We're listing one of our most bitter enemies, Pharaoh's baker. When did he become our enemy? So apparently, Rabbi Malevsky Zatzal explained, the author of this prayer had access to a medrash that I found years later. And in that medrash, it explained that the baker was a bitter, bitter enemy of the Jewish people. He had designs to kill Yosef. He was planning to kill Yosef. Now, we know the rule. Somebody comes to kill you, self-defense. You take care of them first. So when this fellow, who was hell-bent on killing Yosef, was foolish enough to tell over a dream to the Baal HaChalomos, the master of dreams, Yosef wasted no time in taking him out. He killed the baker. And somehow, now let's go back into our story. The wine minister realized that. Somehow he intuited that. It's not clear how. I have some ideas, but it would take too long to explain. But somehow he realized this guy is unbelievably powerful. And he wants to make that point to Pharaoh. And he's saying, Pharaoh, I know how desperate you are. I can see how desperate you are. I can see you just brought in every wizard and warlock and dream interpreter in the whole country, and none of them were able to satisfy you. There's a guy in the dungeon, Jewish, slave, kid, and he can interpret dreams. But I'm just warning you, he's unbelievably powerful. Me, he put back in my place, and him, the baker, he hanged. He's hinting to Paro. If you want to go this route, I don't know how desperate you are, you can go this route, but just realize, if you tell him your dreams, there's nothing off the table. He could do anything with them. He could keep you in power. He could kill you. Who knows what he's going to do? So I'm just telling you, I'm sharing with you the information. I know you're that agitated. This guy can do it, but I don't know at what cost. And so maybe now we can understand that that's why Paro was dancing. That's why he was changing some of the details, because he's worried. This guy is unbelievably powerful. Now, of course, I'm agitated. I don't want my 7 daughters to die. But my goodness, if I tell him all the details and that activates his powers, there's no telling what he could do to me. And so he's wary when he's giving him the details. Maybe that explains it. And now maybe we can understand. Now I'm suggesting this. I'm going past where Rabbi Malevsky went. I'm using that answer to try to answer some of our questions going forward, and then I'll go backward into the original dream or dreams to try to answer those. So hopefully I'll get the chance at 120. I hope it won't be soon. They say, Rashi says, that as long as a student is still alive, his teacher, his Rebbe, even after death, still feels alive. So I hope that by telling over his Torah, I am keeping Rabbi Malevsky alive. So someday, again, at Me'av Esrim, I'll have a chance to talk to him and say, what do you think about this? But I can't. I'm not. If I'm right, he gets all the credit. If I'm wrong, that's all on me, not on him. But these are my suggestions. So maybe what's going on is that, as I said, maybe Paro is hedging his bets because of Yosef's power. And now maybe we can understand why he gives this unsolicited advice. Yosef's the Baal HaChalomos, the master of dreams. You think that he didn't know why Paro took this Jewish convicted felon out of a dungeon, Jewish kid, to interpret his dreams? He knows absolutely why. It's as if he's hinting to him, I'm wondering why you brought me up out of the dungeon. Could it be that some other people on staff told you that you were going to have 7 daughters and that you were going to bury all of them? So let me tell you something, buddy, and listen to me carefully. You like my interpretation better? 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Instead of burying 7 daughters, you find a man who's wise. You find a man of understanding, and you put him in charge of the entire country. Me. You stick me back in that dungeon, fellow? Have fun. Have fun at 7 funerals for your daughters. You like my interpretation, you keep me up here, and you keep me in charge. And it's interesting, we'll see later, that only the food that Yosef gathered stayed fresh. Like, that interpretation is his and only his. And so maybe what's going on is that ingeniously and opportunistically and brilliantly, he's putting Paro on the spot. I know what's going on here. I know why you're so desperate, but it doesn't work that way. You can't get my good interpretation which will uproot the horrifying interpretation that everyone else is giving you, and then stick me back down in that dungeon. I'm staying up here. And I'm not just staying up here. I'm in charge. And Paro gets it. Ooh, this guy is unbelievable. There's nobody like him. I get it. Game, set, match, checkmate. You're in charge. I'm going to stay on the throne. But otherwise, I agree. I'm saving my daughters. You're in charge. And then maybe that can explain why we're told that the brothers initially hated his dreams and his words, because maybe they realize how powerful he is. They're the ones that called him the Baal HaChalomos, the master of dreams. So maybe it could be they're saying, look, it's bad enough you had these dreams, but do you have to interpret them to mean that you're going to rule over us? We know how powerful you are. You could have just said, guys, listen, I have these dreams. You know what they mean? What they mean is that I'm going to be Rothschild. I'm going to be the banker. Every one of you is going to have to clear all your transactions, national, domestic, international, all of them are going to have to go through my bank. And that's why that's what the dreams mean. Instead, you decided to interpret them as you being the leader. Maybe that's why they're so upset at him. And so maybe that could explain that also. And so we see from this that Yosef was the master of dreams, and that he had that kind of power, which answers our questions is that we had at the beginning. We understand now why the brothers are upset at his dreams and his words. We understand why Paro was so desperate. We understand why the wine minister said he put me back in my place and he hanged the baker. We understand why Paro changed the details in the dreams. We understand why Yosef gave unsolicited advice that seemed straightforward, but was not at all. It may have been an ultimatum, not just advice. So we understand all that. And so now we need a takeaway, because as I've been trying to convince you all throughout these talks, there's always a takeaway from these stories. And the takeaway that I want to suggest is that we are all masters of our dreams, every one of us. Hakol bidei shamayim, chutz me'yira shamayim. Everything is in the hands of heaven except fear of heaven, which means there are things that you can't choose. You just can't choose. There have been times when we've been in exile, times when we're persecuted. They can take our bodies, but not our minds. We, each of us, can always choose our spiritual destiny. There are certain things that you're automatically limited by. You can't choose your looks. You can't choose your height. I always wanted to be tall. In fact, sometimes if I speak, somebody will lean in and they'll whisper to me. If it's somebody I know, they'll know how to introduce me. But sometimes I'm asked to speak somewhere and somebody right before is told, introduce them. So it happens all the time. Somebody will whisper to me, how should I introduce you? And I always whisper back, tall. And they say, what? And I say, usually in an introduction, people exaggerate. So I always wanted to be tall. So this way, say tall, you'll exaggerate a little bit. And they think I'm a maniac. My daughter, one of my daughters, was when every Motzi Shabbos, every Saturday night, would hold the Havdalah candle when she was a little kid. And she would hold it like this, like way, way above her head, on her tippy toes. And I would say to her, Tamar, like, what are you doing? Like, every Jewish guy is basically 5'9". Like, there are no Jewish no Jewish guys that tall. And sure enough, the next Saturday night, on her tippy toes, up to here, okay? And thank God, her husband, my son-in-law, is 6'3". So go figure, right? We can't choose things like height and like looks. We can work hard, and we can't choose finances. There are people who are brilliant and did make a lot of money, and people who are lucky and did make a lot of money. The only thing that we can choose is what we would call our ruchnias. We can choose our spirituality. We can choose how close we're going to be to God. We can choose our level of observance. We can choose what we are going to do, and nobody can take that away from us. I remember I'd gone to day school when I was younger, and God bless them. The rabbis tried very hard. I just wasn't that motivated. There was a lot of, you have to do this, you have to do this, you must do this. And it would always frustrate me, if I have to do it and I don't do it. So that's a problem between me and the man upstairs, not between me and you. And then when I got to Or Sameach, this is I was 21. And the rabbi who was also the dorm counselor, who was still there, I don't know if he's still the dorm counselor, I just saw him last week when I was there. He gave me the key to my room and he said, okay, let's go over the rules. And I probably rolled my eyes. And he said, okay, no girls and no drugs, and don't turn any lights on or off on Shabbat, because there are people who are keeping Shabbat. Now, I had a background. I had gone to day school. So I said, listen, what about the other rules? He said, what are the rules? I said, look, I have a background, okay? I grew up already in an observant family. I'm not going into the introductory program. I'm going into the base measures program. Like, I know there are another, what'd you tell me, 3 rules? I know there are another 610, okay? He said, let me ask you something. If we forced you to do something here, when you went back to the States, would you keep doing it? I said, of course not. He said, so why would we force you to do something? And it was like a light bulb went off. It was the first time a rabbi ever spoke to me like that. They were like, it's your choice. He said, we're gonna teach you, and And there are things you may agree with, things you may not agree with. You may have questions. We'll try to answer them. But at the end of the day, you are going to make your own decisions. And it was an incredible thing to be told then, and that it's up to me, as it's up to all of us, to make that choice. And that's why also as parents, we have to make a big differentiation between house rules and God's rules. Okay, we may have made our decisions that we're going to be at a certain level of observance, and of course we want our kids to do that, at least that, hopefully more. Actually, some people hope exactly that and not more, but put that aside. But we hope they'll do at least what we're doing. But we have to realize is that there are certain house rules that have to be enforced. There's certain things that you can't allow in a house because it's just going to destroy you can't allow somebody to I don't know, beat up their siblings or deface property or who knows what, or get in trouble with the law. But then there are other things that they're not house rules, right? I don't care how observant you are, and I don't care how important you are in your community. If a boy decides, you know what, I'm not going to minion, okay, I'm sleeping in. You can awaken him. You can let him know that it's time to pray. But at the end of the day, that's his decision. It's not yours. And that goes with every other rule that's between him or her and God. And if you try to force it, the only thing you'll guarantee is you'll do two things. Number one, you'll ruin your relationship with that kid. And number two, worse. And you'll say, what could possibly be worse than ruining the relationship with the kid? I'm going to tell you. You will risk ruining that kid's relationship with God. Because if that becomes a flashpoint where you're trying to force it, ram it down somebody's throat, not realizing that it's their choice, you're going to ruin your relationship with them, and you're going to ruin their relationship with God. And unfortunately, so many of us, we give up the only area where we have choice. There's only one area. That's it, as I mentioned. It's the only area where you really have choice. And we take it, and we give it on a silver platter, here you go, to the one person that we can't stand the most. So what do I mean by that? I lost track of the number of people I've met that will say, I'd be more observant, but I was totally turned off by a teacher that I had in Sunday school when I was 8. I'd be more observant, but I was completely turned away by a rabbi that I had when I was 13, 14, 15, okay? I'd be more observant. However, my parent did this, my mother did that, my father did that. And so what's going on is that here it's the only area where you have choice. And you're giving it up. And you're saying, and you know what? You know why I'm not doing more, even though really I would want to do more? Because of that person. So that person that you can't stand, you're giving up your choice, your most precious of choices, and you're handing it to the person that you can't stand instead of grabbing it back and saying, you know what? It was such a turnoff. And it was during my formative years. But I'm not going to let that blankety blank person, don't use anything worse than that. We're not supposed to use foul language. I'm not going to let that person take away my choice. And even though, God, you know all the things they did to me. And you know how badly they turned me off. And you know how their presentation of religion, their presentation of Judaism repelled me. It repulsed me. But I realized I'm not going to blame you, and I'm not going to blame Judaism for certain Jews or certain of its practitioners. And even though I realized that person was a hypocrite, and that person was a never-do-well, and that person was evil, whatever, I don't know the situation, notwithstanding that, I'm not going to let that person take away my choice, because I am the Baal HaChalomos, I'm the master of dreams, and I'm certainly the master of my own dreams, and no one can take that away from me. And now, I want to give you a postscript to the story, and I want to give each of you a gift. And I'm going to gift you with what I believe to be one of the most beautiful, hidden in plain sight lessons that exists in the Torah as follows. Let's fast forward, okay? When it comes time to leave Egypt, God gives a command to the Jews. And it's one of those commands that it's so beautiful. It's so fantastic. By analogy, one of my brothers likes to say that only the Jewish people could come up with the following law. We know that on Yom Kippur, the mitzvah not to eat. Not as well known, but not as well known, is that it's also a mitzvah to eat the day before Yom Kippur, to prepare for Yom Kippur. So one of my brothers likes to say, only the Jewish people could come up with a law that it's a mitzvah to eat, like the day before Yom Kippur. You get a mitzvah for eating. I mean, who's not going to do that? Fantastic. So right before the Jews leave Egypt, God gives a command, and he tells Moshe, his most trusted servant, to pass on that command to the Jewish people. Here's the command. Imagine you're there, you're in Egypt, and you've been doing back-breaking labor for years and years, and then suddenly, Moses shows up, takes over the mantle of leadership from his older brother, Aaron, and there are 10 plagues, and the next thing you know, we're being sent out of the country. Wait, guys, wait. Oh, and previously you were given a command that was not so simple. I want you to slaughter the Paschal lamb, the Pesach sacrifice. Dangerous because the Egyptians worship those animals. But wait, I got and bake matzah. Wait, I got one more for you. Okay, what is it, God? Is it a hard one? Okay, guys, you ready? Moses says, guys, one more thing. I want you to go to your Egyptian neighbors and ask them for gold and silver. Are they going to get? Yeah, they're going to give it to you. Really? We just said, go ask your neighbors, your Egyptian neighbors, for their gold and silver. Okay, I can do that. And the Jews go to their neighbors and they ask for gold and silver, and they come out. They got more than they can carry. Every Jew is walking out with gold and top is silver, slave reparations, except for one. There's one guy of all the Jews that does not listen to this command, does not take any gold, does not take any silver, because he's busy with something else. Who? None other than our favorite leader. Moshe walks out of Egypt without gold and without silver. What is going on? You got to lead the troops, pal. That was a command from God. Take the gold and silver. And he's not taking the gold and silver. Now, don't worry. I'm sure that no one said, oh, Moshe's not taking it. I guess I'll leave it. Everybody took it except for him. Why? Because he's busy. He's busy with something else. You know what he's busy with? He is busy carrying the bones of Yosef. He has gone, there's some wild midrashim about how he got them. Some say that they were kept in a crypt, and some say that they were at the bottom of the Nile, and he had to throw something in that said, "I'll lay sure, lift up the ox," and they lifted up. Wild stuff. But whoever it was, we know. Torah says that he went and he carried the bones of Yosef out of Egypt, and that's why he didn't have the gold and silver, because he was busy. Let me ask you a question. Moshe, the last time I checked, was from the tribe of Levi. He was a Levite. There were many, many people from the tribe of Yosef who left Egypt. In fact, there were two tribes at this point, Ephraim and Manasseh. Moshe, what are you doing? I know you're the leader, and I get it. You have rights as the leader. But how could you not let one of Yosef's great-great-grandsons be the guy to carry his bones out? Is that right? Why would you arrogate to yourself, right? Imagine if you had like the chief Sephardic rabbi in Israel, let's say back in the day. Let's say it was, Avaji Yosef when he passed away, right? And let's say one of the non-Sephardic Ashkenazi rabbis said, you know what? I want to be the person to lead the funeral procession. And the Sephardi rabbis say, like, kavod. I mean, he was one of ours. Like, it's not right to pull rank like that. So why is Moshe pulling rank? And you'll say, well, because he's the leader. Yeah, but guess what? Levi had also passed away. And they also took the bones of the other tribes. So why didn't Moshe take the tribes of Levi, his great-grandfather, and let somebody else from Ephraim and Manasseh take the bones of their grandfather or great-grandfather? And so I want to suggest the following to you. Let's go back into our story and let's take a helicopter view, right? Paro in Egypt had dreams, and those dreams meant that he was going to bury 7 daughters. And Yosef came, our leader, and he overturned those dreams, turned it into feast and then famine, thereby saving the lives of Paro's daughters. And fast forward, because we know what happened in the future. What happened in the future is that our future leader, 3-month-old baby, is put in a little basket on the Nile. Baby Moses. And he's going to die. The chances of a 3-month-old baby put in a little basket on the Nile and left afloat of surviving, rounded to the closest number, is 0. It's actually 0.0000001. He's going to die. But what happens? Our leader is saved by Paro's daughter. Now, isn't that interesting? Paro's daughters were going to die, and our leader Yosef saved them. And then later, when our leader, future leader Moshe, is going to die, who saves him? Paro's daughter. Why? Because that's how God acts. Mida keneged mida. He repays exactly and precisely. And so maybe I want to suggest Moshe is saying, I get it. You are the physical descendants of him, and you have every right to take those bones. But let me explain to you. I personally owe him a debt of gratitude, because had he not saved Paro's daughters, then Paro's daughter may not have saved me. I have to take those bones. And you see this over and over and over again, how careful God is to pay us mida k'neged mida exactly in the fashion that we pay him. And I'll finish with the story. It's a cute story, but it's a powerful one. So I learned with a rabbi in Israel, and I don't know if I should say his name because maybe he'll have a parade of people asking him to work miracles for them. So let's just call him Rabbi Goldberg. Maybe that's his name, maybe it's not. So Rabbi Goldberg, every day you could set your watch by him. I study with him at 10:05 p.m. my time. That's 5:05 a.m. his time. So he's been up since who knows what hour, but just to be able to be ready and to study. And so typically his schedule is that he arrives in yeshiva or in his kollel at 8:45 in the morning. And then he says Tehillim for, let's say, about 15 minutes. And then he starts his day of study at 9 o'clock. So one day he gets invited or told about, not supposed to invite, he gets told about a bris in the same building where his kollel studies. And the bris is scheduled to start at 8:50. Now, if it were you or me, we'd probably just go straight to the bris and then go up to where we study. But we're not Rabbi Goldberg. Hey, he gets there at 8:45. Bris is starting till 8:50. So he sits down. He's got 5 minutes in his chair to use, make them worthwhile before he goes down to the bris. So he says to himself as follows. Normally, I would say 15 minutes of Tehillim, but this is only 5 minutes. So instead, I'm going to study some Talmud for 5 minutes. Then later during my break, that's when I'll say the Tehillim. So he does that. 5 minutes of study, which he could accomplish a lot in 5 minutes. He goes down to the bris. He comes back up. Now, by the time he comes back up, you're already in the middle of the study day. And he starts studying. And then he davens mincha. And then he goes to lunch. And now he has completely forgotten about his 15 minutes of Tehillim that he says every single day. And his phone buzzes. He's got one of those old-fashioned phones that is not a smartphone. And he gets a text. And on the text, it says, pray now. Not a phone number. Instead, it's 2 words. It happens sometimes when you get a text. It's words instead of numbers. The words are pray now. But that's not enough. He opens it up. And it says the message is HaTehillim Hayomi. Today's Tehillim. And it gives the list of what Tehillim are supposed to be said that day. And he's looking at it in disbelief. He says, I can't, but what are the chant? What are the incredible hashgacha pratis? Look at that. The one day that I forgot to say Tehillim, somebody, I guess a friend, must have sent my number in and signed me up for this daily reminder to say Tehillim. How do you like that? That's unbelievable. I said, that is incredible. He says, I said, when did this happen? He said, it actually happened last week, but I didn't tell you right away. I said, why not? He says, I'll tell you why. Because I thought that someone had signed me up for this daily reminder that I'd start getting every day. But I didn't get it again. I only got it once that day. The one day that he didn't say Tehillim, he gets a text out of the blue from this daily Tehillim reminder list, and he never gets it again. So I said to him, you know, the only thing that's interesting about the story is that I had no idea that Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, had texting on his phone plan. You know, I would have thought sometimes people have the kosher phone, they can only call. I mean, are you kidding me? It's like God is up there in heaven going, hey, what's going on? I need Rabbi Goldberg's Tehillim today. Let's go. You know, one of you angels, get down there, go tell Eliyahu, give him texting on his plan, have him send some text to Rabbi Goldberg to remind him. So mida k'neged mida. He says his Tehillim every single day. God's going to make sure that he is going to be answered. And we see this. We see this time and time and time again, that the way we act towards God, he mirrors us and he acts like us the same way, but gives us more than we could possibly ask for or imagine. He always gives more than he gets. And the same way with others, the same way we treat others, he makes sure that we get treated the same way. And so I leave you with that. I'm happy, Avi, if we're able to take questions, if the technology allows, I'm happy to take a few questions. I'll let you be the moderator on that.
Okay, great. Hi. Okay, we have a couple questions. Wasn't the daughter that saved Moses of a different Paro from the one that Joseph interpreted the dreams for?
So that's a great question. The question is, was it a different daughter? So I don't know the answer because there's a debate. There's a debate among the commentators as to whether it's the same pharaoh or not. I don't think it matters because the same way that Yosef wasn't the same person as Moshe, I think Pharaoh as a title, it's still so close that it's Mida Keneged Mida. It's still our leader saving the daughters of a Pharaoh, and then a daughter of Pharaoh saving our leader. That I still think is close enough, even if it's not the same Pharaoh, even if it's not a daughter. And for all I know, maybe it was if it wasn't a daughter, maybe it was the mother, of that daughter who saved him, who was saved by Yosef. So I think it's close enough for the point to be made.
Okay, I think that's it for the questions.
Okay.
Someone asked how they can get you in Beit Shemesh next time you come into Eretz Yisrael.
Oh,
but that,
next time I come there. Also, so thank you for the invitation. I only got in because I had a granddaughter. It's the only way to get in right now is through a simcha. So hopefully, that'll be a blessing to everybody that things will open up, that we'll get a cure, and that we'll be able to go back the way we used to and visit more frequently. And so, just if you get in touch with Avi, I will bli neder. We'll try to make that happen someday. Or if not, we can at least do a Zoom one if you have a group over there. I'm happy to do that. Anybody else?
I think. Okay, I think that's it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all, as always, for listening, and nice to see some faces. Hope you enjoy the usual weekly video. On those, I can't see you, so I'm glad I was able to see you on this one. And thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Be well. Take care.